Right. No RY. I love that. All right. All right. So beautiful. We have our next guest speaker coming up. Dynamic young man that I know a lot of you all already know. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. And so I'm gonna tag it over to you, Greg, and let you take it from there. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singleton. And I do wish I could find the enrollment center so I could get in on that next spinny wheel. So I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can bend the rules or anything, but I sure would like to get in on that. But if not, I certainly appreciate the invitation and glad to be here before all of you on Martin Luther King Day. And I must say, listening to Kenya was a real joy, brother. I'm glad to see how you've grown, incredibly inspired by your words, and you gave me even something to think about. So thank you for sharing with us. I will tell you all. I know that this is a different kind of year, different kind of time for us, and I will just be very vulnerable with you. I was one of those people that marked the two as struggling because it's been a tough time. It's been a tough week, just losing far too many people who I don't necessarily know if. I thought I was gonna lose this year, and I think that's probably something that all of us have been going through. So I did want to put that into the atmosphere as well. That I'm grateful to be here. I'm also in a very prayerful state, and hope that all of you all and your families are safe in this season. I'm glad to be here, though, and I'm glad to talk about the topic that you all invited me to speak on. Something I know a little bit about community engagement, and I've essentially made a career out of engaging communities, not just here in Tulsa, but across the country. But I want to start with one of my more embarrassing moments within this space. I was in a little town called High Point, North Carolina. And I was at the time working my dream job. I was working as an organizer for, at the time, President Barack Obama. It was his reelection campaign. And if you can imagine a 20-year-old a young man working for the first African American president, I was pretty excited. I was pretty full of myself. I had on my sharpest suit and I was ready to go. And it was actually my first day out in the field, as they call it. And I was knocking on doors, going door to door, talking about the campaign and trying to register voters. And I had a little spiel. I don't know if anyone's ever knocked on your doors, but we always have a little spiel that we say. And so I knock on this one particular door, and there's a young man. He kind of reminded me of Harrison Hardman right there. And he answers the door, and I give him my spiel, and I think it's fabulous. And he sort of looks at me with a blank stare. He let me finish, and then he said to me, "Sir, I was broke before Obama got elected, and I'm broke now. So you can get the hell off my porch." And all of that jazz that I had carried and that swagger and that confidence, it went away real quick. And it really was an incredibly embarrassing moment. And it was a moment, frankly, that ended my day that day and almost ended my very short-lived career in organizing. I had to reflect. And I actually reflected back to how I even got to this place in the first place. And if you allow me, I will tell you a little bit about that. Before I'd ever gone to go work for any presidents, I was a student at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. And we started there a group called Black Male Achievers, not too different of a mission than the mission that you all have with the African American male students here at TCC. And we did a very simple thing. We sat around a table and we had conversations about what had made us successful, what had gotten us to this point in college, and conversations about some of the struggles we had and where we wanted to go. And the skill that I had learned there was listening. was listening, and then the ability to communicate my thoughts and feelings. And so as I reflected on that experience, I thought about the situation that I was in at that moment in North Carolina, wondering what had possessed that young man, in my opinion, to say something, so ludicrous, right? And then I realized that I was worried about what I was talking about. I was worried about my presentation. I was worried about what I needed him to do, as opposed to worrying about where he was coming from. You see, I never stopped to ask him why he said those things. I never stopped to ask him what he actually and his family actually needed, right? And so later on in the campaign, I actually did start listening. I listened to a young man named Quan. His name was Cornelius. I called him Quan. Quan was walking down the street one day in downtown North Carolina with his two sisters. And uh, they stopped in, frankly, because they were hungry. They needed something to eat. I gave him some Lunchables and I made him a deal, guys. I said, I will give you Lunchables every day if you take me into these neighborhoods with you, because I'm not getting anywhere with this community. And so that's what we did. Quan went out and started knocking on doors with me, went out and started registering voters with me. And there was a complete 180 that happened. All of a sudden, those same people who didn't want to have anything to do with me, all of a sudden they began to listen and they began to register. And what I learned was the important thing to the community there wasn't the presidency. It was actually the fact that they didn't have buses that ran after 5 o'clock. So you had all of these community members who needed jobs or wanted to go to that second or third job, and they didn't necessarily have a way home. In fact, that was why I ran into Quan, because he was walking home from his second job after school. And so what that campaign became about, it was about what the community needed, which was, hey, we need a new mayor that will actually work with city government and get the buses to run past 5 o'clock. And so the story I tell is that in 2012, when everybody was celebrating the reelection of President Obama, I was sitting there in High Point, North Carolina, celebrating the election of the first woman African-American mayor in High Point, North Carolina. And I'm happy to tell you that those buses do now run. They now run till 9 p.m. And so it was a extremely important lesson for me to learn about listening and about the importance of engagement. And it's where I fell in love with the power of what can happen when we do listen to each other, when we do realize that there's a pathway forward to actually work towards our goals within community, and we can accomplish some amazing things. Now, as I think about where we are now and think about being 100 years from the massacre within our own very own community in Greenwood, I always reflect back not on the terror and the horror of that moment, but what came after. It was just a few days after, it was 3 or 4, I'm not sure. There was a young man named Buck Culver Franklin. He was an attorney in the area. You may know BC Franklin Park if you're familiar locally. That's the same guy. And there's a picture that you can find on the internet, I even think, of BC Franklin and a few of his staff members, and they're sitting in a tent. And BC has his legs crossed and he is studiously looking down. And I asked my father one day, what was he doing? Because around you can see rubble in the background. So you just see this tent and then just rubble, and you can just imagine sitting on a tent of rubble with probably smoke still billowing up from the massacre. Why is he sitting in a tent? What is he doing? My father told me that BC Franklin, just a few days after this massacre, after everything had been destroyed, um, he was out there signing insurance claims for his community. That's the story I like to think about when I think about Greenwood, when I think about the events of the massacre, because for me, it is really the turning point of what happens. That's it right there. It is the turning point of what happens when community comes together, and when they say we're not going to be destroyed by what's holding us back, but we are going to be given life by what we can do together. Now, what you may or may not realize is that it was that exact spirit that rebuilt Black Wall Street bigger and better the next time. And I will tell you that as we sit in 2021 with the racial uh, disparities that still exist in this city, with the in with the inequities that exist, that all of you are living every day. If we are going to turn that around, if we are going to, as our people have always done, become better out of the things that are holding us back, it's not going to be because somebody else came in and told us what to do. It's not going to be because somebody else came in and was our savior. It's going to be because we come together as a community, listen to each other, form a plan, and then go forth with fidelity until that is done. And I will tell you that we have always been successful when we do that. So I want to leave us in that spirit. The last thing I want to leave is how I even got to the position that I got to in the first place. And this is strictly for my students. My freshman year of college at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, it was actually Barack Obama's first year as president, and he was trying to pass the Affordable Care Act. And at the time, you had to get a whole bunch of signatures from everywhere in the country to even get the Affordable Care Act, passed into law. And so I was organizing on campus, trying to get signatures. I wasn't giving any money; I was doing it for free. Okay, the person that I worked for 4 years later ended up working in the Obama administration. It was because she remembered my work ethic as a freshman that when they had a position open, she called and just asked if I would want to work for the campaign and for President Obama. You never know who is watching you. Okay, so not only is it critical to get engaged in your community and to learn how to listen and to learn how to work with each other, but it's also critical to always give your 100% effort in what you're doing at that time. You never know who's watching, and you never know how your actions one day are going to lead to what happens with you in the future. BC Franklin probably didn't necessarily know that just by being in that tent and getting to work a few days later, that he would be inspiring us 100 years from now. Okay. And so we can't necessarily control. There's a lot in life we can't control, but what we can control is the effort that we put in and the actions that we take on a daily basis. And that's you all's responsibility, uh, particularly as young African American men, but anyone on campus right now at TCC, understand that the work ethic that you put in right now is going to lead to where you want to go into the future. So, again, I hope that you all are encouraged on this day. I hope that you all are excited about what is to come for you. I certainly am. But just remember that we don't do anything alone. And so I think you've heard it a million times. Since Kenya left you with a quote, I'll leave you with a quote too. If you want to go fast, go on, go by yourself, go alone. But if you want to go far, build yourself a community and go forth together. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Robinson. Just again, just a wealth of information, right? Just good, sound information. And we asked at the very beginning, I want to make sure as a student, as a participant of this event, that I grab some information, right? We know it's a lot coming down, but I want to make sure that I'm grabbing something that I can use now. And so just awesome information, tagging Kenya, that knowing your why, tagging it with Greg, that responsible being, understanding your responsibility as part of your community, knowing your responsibility in that aspect. And then there was a question that came up in the chat room presented. Do you know what your community needs? Are you aware? Are you conscious of what's going on in your community and how you can help fill in gaps there in your community? Just having that mindset, right, of for us and our students, right, that it is bigger than us. Greg, you hit the nail right on the head, right? You want to run fast, go by yourself, right? We want to do something that lasts, right? We want something that lasts that we can build on. So awesome, we run together. And so just great information on that, Greg, and we definitely appreciate you.
So I have a question here at this point. Do we have a student who would like to share something that they gleaned off of the last two presenters? So we should have some students in the room who may want to say something. It looks like we have about 2 or 3 minutes where we can do that. And you can type it in the room or you can unmute yourself and speak as well.
I'd like to hear from Tony Haggerty Jr. He knows his aunt is going to ask him what he's learning.
Okay.
Unmute, Tony Jr.
And we have others too. We have other students while we're waiting.
What are you learning so far?
Can you guys hear me? This is my first time here. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect, but hearing from you guys, I was really impressed. Like, it took me by like surprise. I didn't know exactly what to expect, and like hearing you guys talk and explain all this sort of stuff, it really inspired me, especially when you said like giving 100%, and like giving 100%, you never know who's watching, stuff like that. I don't know, that just hit me, sort of. And I just want to say thank you so much for speaking today.
Thank you. Now, Francis, are you college student or high school student?
I'm a college student. I'm a freshman at TCC.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Very good.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Awesome, Francis.
Anyone else? We have maybe another hear from another person. Don't want to stress you out, but remember, you can type in the room if you have something.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Castor. This is also my first time here. I think just from the conversations and things that have been said today, I think it's important to know your history, how it is important that those that can behind you kind of sustain and kind of direct the pathfinder for you. So listening to both speakers, I think is very motivating to hear.
Tell him if you don't want to say it, just type it. He can just type it in the chat box.
Thank you, Jimmy, for that information. Thank you very much. And even as we're going through here and we're gathering that information, where there are some of our friends and relatives, right, that are not, of course, not part of this event, right? We want to continue to pass that information on. I'm going to circle this bush many, many times because this is where I set my flag down. And that is making sure that our students persist through to successfully finishing their education, right? You have these goals set out. There are things coming through right? Barriers. We just want to make sure we're persisting through. Greg talks about it. Kenya talks about it. Even when we reflect back on what our ancestors went through the race massacre, the underlining fact is that they persisted through. He talked about BC Franklin, still at work, still down for the community and working with the people, even when there was rubble around, right? They did not let him stop. So as you're pursuing this semester, you pursuing for your goals and to finish the semester strongly, there are going to be things that are going to come up. There are going to be things that are going to come up. But we want to know that why, like Kenya was talking about, and make sure we finish the semester successfully. Right? That's the main piece that we want to get out, that we hit in the semester and that we finish in it successfully. Thank you very much, Dr. Dickens.